What we've been going over so far is only the first way in which Kant looks at the fundamental principle of morality. But Kant is kind of like a scientist in his approach to problems. He wants to see if the reasoning holds up to testing. So he goes back through the problem a second time from a different angle, and actually a third, but we're only going to cover the first two, to see what we can learn from it. So let's review these central ideas we've gotten out of our reasoning the first time through. The only thing good in itself is a good will. The good will is ruled by duty. Duty is properly ruled by reason, and we recognize the right of reason to rule our duty. Now add this. When you encounter other people, you recognize instantly, without knowing anything about them or even having to talk to them, that they have the faculty of reason. That is not the same as thinking they're behaving rationally or that they're using their reason well. You just recognize that they have the faculty. Now, you recognize that you have a duty to reason, and you recognize that other people have reason in them. Put that all together and you get the humanity formula, and it says we should never act in such a way that we treat humanity, whether in ourselves or in others, as a means only, but always as an end in itself. Treating someone as an end in themselves means that you always have to recognize a basic, fundamental value in every person merely because they're a person. You can never treat other people as mere objects for your own ends. We are to respect human beings because they're persons, and this requires a basic regard. Respect for people as ends in themselves doesn't mean that we can never use people for our own ends. We use people for our own ends all the time. When you take the bus, you're using the bus driver as a means to your end of getting to your destination. When you take this class, you're using me as a means to your end of getting an education. The point is, you can't treat the bus driver as a mere means. You have to keep a fundamental regard for them as a person. Respect for people as ends in themselves also does not mean that Kant says we have to pretend that everyone is equally talented or good or charming, what have you. Treating a person as an end in themselves is treating them with what's called recognition respect. Recognition respect is just recognizing that all people deserve a fundamental dignity and value simply by virtue of being a person. This is different from appraisal respect. Appraisal respect is when you admire someone for their particular talents, abilities, or achievements. When you listen to someone sing and think, wow, that person is a really good singer, you are giving them appraisal respect. Kant argues that the categorical imperative demands recognition respect for all people. And just to be sure it's clear, Kant sees both the formula of universal law and the humanity formula as two ways of expressing the same rule. They're both ways of expressing the categorical imperative. Here's another important thing Kant points out in his discussion of reason and desire and moral considerations. People have noted that the categorical imperative is pretty hardcore. It's very demanding of you. And we often experience the need to treat other people as ends in themselves as a restriction on our own behavior. So in some sense, we might think of these moral rules as a restriction on our freedom. Kant thinks this is really, really wrong and based on a very confused way of thinking about freedom. When we think of following these rules as a restriction on our behavior, what we're thinking is, I don't get to do anything I want. But it's a mistake to think that freedom means having no restrictions whatsoever on what you do. Remember what we said earlier about your desires. Your desires are not formed by you, really. They're formed at a very deep level by your circumstances, your society. Sure, you have basic needs for food, shelter, sex, but why do some people want a pizza while others want sanakji, which is a Korean delicacy in which the chef slices off a tentacle of a living octopus and brings it to the table still squirming? So, being allowed to do what you want isn't really freedom. It's being dictated to by the accidents of your birth. What you have that's your own is your reason. So it's only by following the dictates of your reason that you're free, which for Kant means self-ruling. There's no way to operate without any governing principle. You're being led by others, by your desires, by something. So what makes you free is if you're ruled by yourself. That is your reason. What Kant is developing here is the notion of autonomy, self-rule. That comes from the Greek auto, meaning self, and nomos, meaning rule. Notice how this shows a profound interconnection between a deep appreciation for the necessity of self-rule and simultaneously the absolute necessity of respecting all other people as fundamentally valuable in themselves. We often think of respecting and promoting basic rights and freedoms for others as a constraint on our own freedom. What Kant shows is that the two are inseparable. The fundamental respect for persons as ends in themselves is completely bound up in your own freedom. As soon as you recognize the right of reason to rule you, you must recognize that all other reasoning beings exert this basic demand on you. Both are tied together. And this recognition that respect for the rights of others is necessary for your own self-rule is a profoundly important insight about morality. Okay, by now you know the drill. Go ahead, review your notes, review the slide, and when you're ready, move on to the next item. Thanks very much. Look forward to seeing you.